we talked a lot of game planning and theory and concepts last week. And this week, I was just really dismayed at some fundamental problems, some bad footwork, some the ball coming out of the hand, all weird. Did I see what I thought I saw?
Yeah, I mean, well, one, thanks for having me back. I'm pumped up to be back. I think there were some issues on tape, specifically the interceptions when you talk through them, like the first INT, right, where it's all of a sudden, hey, the first INT is tough because the tight end to me kind of slows down, but that's not the issue. It's not on the tight end because Justin needs to throw what we would call like a body shot, right? You need to body him up, meaning, hey, there's a safety high. So when we go to fire this thing, you've got to body up the tight end. So we missed there. And then also we have the one against Tampa too, which is really a great disguise. And he needs to throw that thing right after Mike Backer, who's not looking at him when he bails out from kind of a double A. They have both backers walked up and it's kind of a double A look and then he bails out. So yeah, you're not wrong to be discouraged, but I do think it was slightly better than fans are feeling based on kind of what I'm seeing on Twitter.
Well, I want to ask you specifically, like, this is what I was seeing, and I want to get a quarterback expert's thoughts on it. I feel like I'm seeing him not throw from a sturdy base, that even when the pocket is clean, his delivery looks a little off to me. So can you talk to me? Tell me what I'm seeing with the bottom half of Justin Fields' body.
Yeah, I mean, so it's tough because everything is so nuanced in terms of like, hey, my platform in the pocket. Like when things are clean, I don't really see him falling off a ton. Now, when things are messy or, hey, I've been under duress all game, or listen, you know, the one that he sails that the safety picks is a perfect example of it. Like, sure, would I love to see him, you know, lead as, you know, put his front hip on the target and really drive at it? Yeah. But we've got a 3 technique bearing down on us that basically forces us to be elevated and fade away. So I don't think like on clean pockets, he's really there. I do think throughout a game, if he is getting absolutely pounded like he's been the last few games where he's under duress frequently, like, yeah, I think he starts to fade mechanically. There are some things that are going around, though, that I generally disagree with. Like people are talking about, hey, he's throwing, you know, from like all his cleats are in the ground, right? That's a good thing biomechanically. Like we don't want the toes up anymore like we used to back in the day, right? Like I got coached in youth football to be on my toes. Like by the time I had gotten to middle school, right, that was done. So to me, it's like there's things that he does mechanically that aren't bad things that we were told were bad things, you know, a while ago. So to me, I'm not seeing the mechanical breakdowns. What I'm seeing is we need to process the game slightly faster. But I also saw some stuff conceptually that I think the Bears were going in the right direction in terms of like, hey, let's try to expedite his success.
Like what? What did you see that made you think that?
The big so they hit that deep over. I don't know if you guys remember the one where they hit the tight end and it's like an 18-yard cross or coming across the field. That is such a good concept. It's called the Dover concept. The number 1 receiver to the left runs a big stick at 8 post. That's just a clear route, right? We don't care. We're not going to look at it against the majority of coverages, okay? If it's quarters, we'll throw it. If not, we're not even going to worry about it. Then it was from the bunch. The tight end was on the deep over. That's our second progression. That's the one he drills, but they also had a shallow coming below it. That's the third progression. He didn't need to get to it. But the fact that they got to more pure progressions where it's 1, 2, 3, no matter what, I think really helped him. The boot stuff, I thought he did a good job with. Now, there were some things to clean up. I thought he missed like an out route that he could have hit later in the game because he took his eyes at the over too early. But to me, some of the pure progression shots that they had, I think that's exactly how you get this kid going. It's what we talked about when you guys were saying, hey, what's the difference between Jalen Hurts right now and him? Well, we talked about, hey, shot plays off a run action and play action where, hey, it's a pure progression. And it's exactly what we got on that one Dover concept. And I'd love to see them implement a little bit more of it.
How do you feel he's being protected?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hit and miss. Like, and that's the challenge where you're, you know, back to your question before where it was like, you know, hey, I'm seeing these things mechanically, or I'm seeing this where he's kind of falling away. It's so sporadic right now, protection-wise, which to me is part of why he's having the issues, why he's like fading away on somewhere. It's like, okay, this is a clean pocket. Why do you feel like he's fading away? I think a lot of it's because they're hit and miss in protection. I think moving the launch point is helping. those kind of boot plays where he's getting out of the pocket, it helps because it slows down some of those DNs. Simultaneously, right, he took some free shots because when they walk up an extra force player, and when we're saying force player, we mean they walk up an extra guy who's going to fire off the edge, we have to get out of a boot against that. They kept it on, and I don't know if that was Justin or if they didn't have a, hey, man, you can alert out of this look. So that's where it's kind of hard for me to really say, like, man, it was bad on Justin's part or the coach's part. If they don't have an alert check, it's terrible on the coaches. If they had an alert check and he didn't get out of it, it's a bad look on him. So moving the launch point's going to help. But I do think, like, listen, I don't think his protection's as bad as we thought it would be going into this season. But I don't think it's been great compared to, like, NFL standards when you watch other teams play.
Very first drive, there's a 3rd and 9. And it was vertical concepts, multiple vertical concepts. Fields can't pull the trigger on any of them, ends up buying himself time and using his remarkable athleticism to scramble for a 29-yard run. It's a big gainer, but it left me thinking that he still left a better play on the table. What happened?
Yeah, great question. So, and this is the curse of the all-22. I'm telling you that right now. I know exactly what you're talking about. We got 3 receivers to the right. The number 3 receiver, he's on an ultra high. So think of that as like, hey, man, get through 20 yards and go and aim at that front pylon to the same side. Okay, that's what an ultra high is. The number 2 receiver's on a sail route. Sail is halfway between an out and a corner. Okay, that's our sail route. And our number 3 receiver, or our number 1 receiver, all the way outside, he's just on like a sit, right? Hey, we're going to get 6 yards and sit down. The reason he does not get to the wide open sail that everyone is circling, right? I see a bunch of, people out there circling, man, hey, why didn't he throw the sail? Is because he's hanging on the ultra high like he should. It's cover 1 hole, right? They've got a deep safety. That's our cover 1 player. It's man across the board. Look at the ultra high guy's hips. His hips are literally facing the middle of the field. The second that ultra high crosses his face, he is going to be wide open for a touchdown. Fields is holding on to it because he's like, listen, dude, I'm going to get him. Well, guess what? They get tangled up. By the time he works down to the sail route, the sail is kind of in a tweener area. Like, do you really throw it to the sideline or not? Then he gets flushed out and goes and makes a play. So to me, I actually viewed that play as a good bad. Like, listen, I, as a quarterback, completely understand why you're hanging on the ultra high. At some point, you've got to get off it and get to the sail quicker. They'll coach that. But to me, it was one of those where it's like the sail route, of course, looks wide open on the all-22, along with like every single quarterback in the NFL. I'm sure he wishes he had 18 different sets of eyes and he was looking at a camera, but he's not, right? So he's going to hang on that ultra high, look for a touchdown, gets out of the pocket, creates for 29. That's going to me, I view that play as like this is the kind of kid who, as he's learning everything else, when to get off the ultra high and get to the sail, all that kind of stuff, he's going to bail himself out and go get 30-yard gains. So it's one of those things where, like, I viewed that as a good bad. A lot of people are trashing him for it. I don't see it the same. I see it as like, hey, I perfectly understand why you're hanging on the ultra high. If he would have had his eyes on like the backside sit route or something in that situation, like that's something to crucify him for. He's hanging on the ultra high. He wants to hit it, and listen, they get tangled up. You could have called DPI there too. So to me, it's like, it's just one of those where it's the curse of the all-22. Like, listen, anybody, you could throw up any quarterback in the NFL, throw up Aaron Rodgers, throw up Tom Brady, and you can circle open guys. That's why it's just such a nuanced thing to evaluate because, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody, but like, listen, dude, I could not go and tell you why a right tackle, I could tell you who a right tackle is supposed to block. I couldn't kick step. I haven't kicked step since I was 6, right? When I was a fat kid trying to play football at first, you know what I mean? So like, it's really hard then to turn on the tape and know why an NFL quarterback is looking somewhere.
If you want to check out Tim Jenkins on Twitch, you can. He's at twitch.tv/Chicago670 The Score. When you mentioned Tangled Up, it made me look at something in my notes. This is the second week in a row that we see a lot of Bears legs and feet hit each other as guys are crossing around in the backfield. You've got linemen stepping on fields. You've got running backs. Is this a function of tight formations? Is anybody making mistakes? Why does this happen? We saw it happen in the 4th and goal that didn't work in the last game. Bears around the line just seem to be in tight with a lot of limbs flying around.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's more of a function of the NFLPA, like, to be honest, because, like, listen, we're not getting reps anymore in training camp at like a high intensity or the high intensity that we used to. So, like, hey, when the lights are flashing and people going full speed, you're going to go to make a cut a half second earlier than you do in walk-through tempo or in shoulder pads and a T-shirt, and you're going to get tangled up. The one this week where Fields is trying to get out of the pocket and hits his left tackle, he needs to just take that halfback right now on the spot route. The spot was wide open. That was, I think, his worst play of the day, was not taking the tailback because they had motioned the tailback into the slot, right? And he was just on a 6-yard, sit route. He needs to take that. It's like we call it the Ram concept, where you have stacked receivers. The guy on the ball runs like a 12-yard in route. Then the halfback behind him runs like a 6-yard, sit. He just needs to hit the sit. I don't know why he started to scramble. That was a terrible decision. I think his worst decision of the day. And then, your left tackle's getting beat a little bit. You try to get out of the pocket and you just get tangled up. So to me, I think the one that you talked about, the 4th and goal, is more indicative of, like, we don't have enough high-intensity reps, and those are the things that you're going to have to work out throughout the season. The one that we had this week is just Fields needs to get the ball out of his hand to a sit route that was wide open.
If you were in a position to talk with Justin Fields about his performance in the game against Houston, what would be the points that you would hammer home?
I'd hammer home not to listen to anybody, because I didn't think he played that terribly, and I know that's not going to be a popular take in Chicago, but listen, I think his 2 interceptions are understandable. Listen, you're going to try to force the ball on the, against the Tampa runner. You're going to try to hit that. You've got to drive that football. And then I think the tight end one, you've got to drive the football again. To me, what I would be talking to him about more is, I hate getting so technical, but he takes a lot of 3 hitch. Okay, so 3 hitch as a quarterback is 1, 2, 3, and a big hitch. It's all rhythm. It's reach, cross, rhythm, and then you hitch up in the pocket. I want to see less 3 hitch from him and more what we call 1 skip, which is that, hey, you take one and then you kind of hop back. Tom Brady made it super popular, but he plays with his right foot back, so it's slightly nuanced. It's a little bit different with Fields being his left foot back, but I want to see him 1 skip. What's the end result of that? Like, all said and done, not taking 3 hitch and taking 1 skip, is you're going to get the ball out slightly quicker, which I think is what the Chicago offense actually needs. So I don't think it's a miscalculation in terms of footwork. I just think it's like a lot of these concepts have been taught forever off of the 3 hitch from a quarterback. And, like, we just need to speed it up. We got to kind of get, slightly new age in terms of taking that 1 skip, get the ball out on time. And I think it's really going to speed them up. So if I was going to say, like, hey, man, we're going to fix one thing this week and it's going to pay huge dividends, to me, we're fixing we're taking a 1 skip instead of 3 hitch on a lot of these plays.
Is that the jump turn almost? Is that just like a jump pivot?
Yeah, it's like you take, like, literally you take 1 step and you jump.
Okay.
Right? Like,
okay. No, that's
like
I can
Aaron
see
Rodgers.
it. Yes.
Yeah, Rodgers does it a ton. The thing that Rodgers and Brady do is they play with their right foot back, so you have to, slightly tweak it. But the guy who started this drop, believe it or not, is Sam Bradford, right, with the Rams. Like, a lot of people don't know this, and then everyone else kind of stole it. But I really think it's the best thing you could do to speed this thing up, and really help him process things a little quicker and trust his eyes more, because his eyes are going to get there at a better time than when you take that slow, methodical, rhythm 3 hitch. I call it a camp drop because everyone and their mom knows how to do it, right? But I think the 1 skip is a way that you could get this offense fast-tracked on some of these concepts.
Help me with a terminology issue here, because I've been hearing and seeing a lot of it. I know you have mentioned it before. The popularity of single high robber. Yep. Where it can be rotated into or out of pre-snap, quickly post-snap. Then I heard single high lurk. Are lurk and robber interchangeable, or are they different?
People use them all wrong. Want me to be honest with you? They use them all wrong. Listen, here's the easiest way to know. Okay, cover 1 robber. Think of it as we have 2 safeties, right? Mm-hmm. One rotates to the middle, and then when a safety inserts and he's the player that's reading the quarterback's eyes, that's robber. Okay. Lurk, never heard of it, right? No idea. No coach has ever talked to me. No one's like calling me up and saying, hey, Tim, this guy's struggling against cover 1 lurk. I haven't heard of it, right? I'm assuming that's what people are saying is robber. But the other cover 1 variation that the Chicago Bears see a ton of is cover 1 hole. The only difference there is one of the safeties is back deep. The other safeties think man-to-man coverage on like a slot. And that robber player is now coming from the second level. So a linebacker, right? So 1, 2, 3 working back are our levels. If the robber player is the linebacker, it's cover 1 hole. And if it's a drop down from the safety, it's cover one robber. That's the only thing people need to realize. Like lurk, I'm guessing is someone calling it lurk. I'm guessing that's a robber being a safety. But listen, if you're talking like, hey, you want to fit in an NFL meeting room, you're either calling it robber, meaning it's coming from the third level, or you're calling it hole because he's coming from the second level.
Tim, what do you think of what you've seen from Daniel Jones in Brian Daboll's system?
I mean, last night, like the dude was competing his tail off, and it just he didn't get a lot of help. So to me, I'm like, watching last night, I walked away impressed with Daniel Jones, not super impressed with, the supporting cast around him outside of like Saquon, right? And then Shepard going down at the end is really going to hurt the Giants. So, I think 3 weeks into it, you have to be somewhat impressed because of like the little things that people aren't going to get juiced about. But man, it jacks me up when I'm watching at home. When he hits his last step off a run action, right? And then he starts to scramble and gets it out to his check down. That's really exciting. The reason it's exciting is because we have binders full of plays, right? That we're repping and working all training camp. And for the fact that in the heat of battle exactly where my check down is on every single look, like that's mastery of a system. So those are the things that get me excited. So I'd say I'm somewhat impressed by where Daniel Jones is at operating the offense today. But I'm not super impressed, I think, overall, like with where the Giants sit. But listen, they're 2-1. And that's the thing about the Bears, too, that we got to remember is winning in the NFL is so hard, man. And the fact that they are 2-1, like we should be a lot more excited than we probably are.
Oh, okay, so that's one of the things that Dan and I have been dealing with for the last couple of days of how do you get on the parallel tracks of the coach each week putting together a game plan that clearly he's trying to win that next game, doing everything he can to win that next game, versus you're also trying to bring along a quarterback and allow him to develop. How do you make sure that you have both of those trains on the tracks at the same time?
It's about how you implement the progression. So you're not going to change. You're not going to simplify the game plan because game plan to game plan, you have to change in the NFL or you're going to get murdered, right? You're going to get run off the field. So you have to still game plan for that opponent, but how you put in the progressions, meaning, hey, do you teach this as we're going to read this different on all 6 coverages that they're going to present us this week? Or do we just read this, hey, from 1 to 2 to 3, and then picking and choosing which ones are most important to have a nuanced read on? That's how you develop the quarterback, in my opinion, and then also prioritize winning the game. Because ultimately, it's like we talked about last week. That's the most important thing. Like, I'd love to say, like, these guys are playing the long term with Fields. They're not. Like, they're going to get ran out of town in 2 years if they don't win. Like, Chicago's like every other NFL market. Like, people want to win now. That's why it's the greatest game on planet Earth. It's because no one has any patience, right? Like, my wife's trying to run me out of the house if our 5-year-old flag team doesn't win, right? Like, football is just, it's different, man. People want to win no matter the level. So to me, it's like, that's how you're going to help develop him. Is I think it's all about how you create and how you're going to teach the progressions to him. But simultaneously, you are putting in every route concept needed to go and beat this team the next week.
Tim Jenkins, outstanding as always. Thanks so much.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.